Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, with so many Smash clones out there, it's only a matter of time before Patrick and Mark wind up as characters in one.
Ice climber style?
Sure. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. How's it going for you, Patrick?
Good. I, this weekend, traded in to get a PlayStation VR headset.
That's very cool.
It is very cool. I find myself just sort of like idly thinking about it, where I'm like, I could look, I got nothing against the real world. The real world is fine. But if I could disappear into VR for just a little bit, I would be a lot happier with the real world.
Now I've got to say, this is a little bit of a changing of tune.
Yes, a tune changing. But I would say that I am not as, or was not as fervently anti-VR as you are.
Yeah, that's fair.
You're kind of just a like, that's not for me, I don't need it kind of guy. I was sort of in the camp of like, I've never really experienced it, and I'm okay not having that experience. And then I did a couple VR things at E3 this year, some of which I thought were cool, some of which, look, man, there was one where you're an orc playing war drums. That's a cool game. You're just drumming the whole time, and you're an orc.
Like Donkey Konga?
No, it was worse than Donkey Konga.
That's a not high bar.
I love Donkey Konga. I will defend that game. In any event, been playing Moss on PSVR, which is adorable. It's got this great little character who's a mouse. She's got big ears, and like you direct her around this world. It's awesome.
So
it's a good game.
Partly what you're saying is if you seem distracted during this episode, it's because
Yes.
your mind is wandering to the heyday of wearing PlayStation VR. Like if we could see your thought bubble. Like
that's right.
Comic strip.
You would just see
You're like laying in a field.
A plate of lasagna, of course.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
I like this. I like having an excuse for why I'm distracted today. No, but Mark, look, here's something that we cannot be distracted from.
Serious business.
Serious business here. My copy of Sonic Forces. Do you want to borrow it? I'm not offering that to Mark. I'm offering that to you, the listener. All you got to do is send me your mailing address to Nintendo Cartridge Society
at gmail.com.
And I send you my copy of Sonic Forces. You play it for as long as you want and send it back.
No cost to you.
None. No cost to you whatsoever. And in fact, very little responsibility asked of you. If this thing comes back to me at all, I'm not even going to say in one piece, at all, we will sing your praises in our hallowed halls
And
for decades.
Patrick's not offering for me to borrow it, but I could put myself on the list. So you should put yourself on the list before me.
Right. And let the record show, I have never offered to let Mark borrow this game.
It's a
Never.
kindness.
Never
We're good enough friends.
That's right. So it is something that I'm inflicting on you, our listeners. Mark, look, we've got a big topic today. We're talking about games that are like Super Smash Brothers. So let's just get into it, shall we?
Yep.
Okay. Why are we doing this first thing?
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate
Yes.
comes out
8 days.
8 days from now.
That's very soon. It's obviously a highly anticipated Nintendo Switch title. I feel like these games are always highly anticipated. Tons of hype. People get very excited for them. Before we get into games that are like Smash, what is it about Smash Brothers that A, you find attractive, and B, you think that like makes the internet and Nintendo fans so excited? And are those the same thing?
Yeah. Well, you know how as a kid you would play with toys and they would be toys from all different, they wouldn't necessarily just be from one franchise or another.
Right.
You just had toys
Your
and you would play with them
Ghostbusters are
together.
playing with your Ninja Turtles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what like the Smash Brothers is the embodiment of. It's taking franchise, especially as the series has grown, franchises that people love, even outside of Nintendo, and putting them all together and matching, like pitting them against one another. It's amazing. It's unprecedented.
Ooh. So I have a question about this.
Okay.
I wonder if that is... So first of all, do you think that is a reason that you are excited for these games, or that like the internet is excited, or both?
I think it's like I think it is what makes Smash Brothers such an event. Even if you're not like consciously bowled over by the fact that Snake is in like the Smash Brothers game,
right?
Or you don't particularly care that Pac-Man showed up. It's
right.
like the fact that it's happening at all, and that it is done well. I mean, it's kind of like Infinity Gauntlet, or what do they call it? Infinity War?
Yeah, just the Avengers.
Yeah, Avengers, where you're like 3/4 the reason I'm impressed is that they pulled this off at all.
Right. I can't believe that Robert Downey Jr. and Chadwick Boseman are in this movie at the same time. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. So I that is obviously part of the Smash Brothers DNA from the beginning, right? That, and even using your metaphor, like the original game was like the concept, and I guess they're even sort of carrying this over into the new one, that they are toys being played with by a kid, right? But I wonder how much of, because the game style doesn't necessarily dictate that you have characters from different franchises beating each other up. A lot of what we do see in Smash-like games does borrows that element, but not all of them do. And I would say that I find myself less attracted to the Smash clones that don't, use that aren't mashing up other franchises or only have like a guest character or two. But it is interesting to me that has become like a fundamental building block of this style of game, because really all it is a like 4-player, up to 4-player, maybe up to 8-player, like simultaneous chaotic fighting game.
Right. Well, I feel like the other aspect of this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more when have actually had a chance to play Ultimate, is that it's a little bit like Smash Brothers to me is like the Mario Kart of fighting games.
Yes.
Where
and
because of the
Splatoon is the Mario Kart of first-person shooters.
A little bit Splatoon, a little bit less.
Okay.
Because I feel like Splatoon is well balanced in the sense that there aren't really like items that can win a game for you, or like make you super competitive. Like if you're not good at Splatoon 2,
right, you'll get rolled no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas like Smash Brothers, if you're playing against somebody who's like really skilled at the game, like knows all the combos and the moves and everything, you're probably not going to win 9 times out of 10, but you can be competitive. You can still have fun, right?
Yeah.
It's like the difference between Gran Turismo and Mario Kart and something like Street Fighter or Tekken and Smash Brothers. Not that they both don't have like their technical aspects, but they're more friendly, which is something that like I love, because I don't need a car racing simulation. That doesn't interest me. I don't need like a technical fighter. Like that doesn't interest me.
I love the idea of a racing sim that is still go-karts. That's so fun to me, but it's like really strict, like normal real world physics.
Yeah. You have to like,
and you're just kids at a go-kart.
The game starts, you're getting out of like your mom's car in front of like Boomers or Camelot or something. Right? It's like a really, like, wow, the detailing on the like teenager taking our money.
It's so good. There's one track. Yeah, that would be a nightmare. No one would want to play this. But yeah, and I do think that one of the things that is interesting about that accessibility of like anyone can play Smash Brothers, is that a lot of that is accomplished by the either like items or weapons or whatever that introduce more elements of chaos, of uncontrollability. You can be really great at Smash Brothers. As soon as someone gets like one of those power bombs, like it's gonna mess up everything, and everyone is vulnerable. And so like I think that is almost more a more fundamental building block of these games than the like crossover nature of them. And obviously, like Nintendo's never tried to do a like all Mario Smash or all just despite what many people will say, an all Fire Emblem Smash. Even though like they could, but if for whatever reason the crossover nature of it has become part of like the proper Smash brand identity.
I also think that one thing that like Smash Brothers has set the template for these Smash like games is, to my knowledge, I'm having trouble recalling a kind of like casual fighter like before Smash Brothers.
I mean, arguably Mortal Kombat. Like the Mortal Kombat games, with some exceptions, have tended towards the more casual side. That they are more focused on showing you something interesting or showing you something compelling. And because it's Mortal Kombat, it's usually like a gory thing. But like Mortal Kombat has even sort of embraced the kind of spectacular nature of crossover of late. The most recent Mortal Kombat game has an alien in it, has a predator in it, has like other like horror movie characters in them. And the same NetherRealm, the same studio that does Mortal Kombat, has also done the last two Injustice games, which are the DC characters. And the first one of those had Scorpion in it as a downloadable character. So like I think Mortal Kombat is that standard bearer for like casual.
I guess I feel like Mortal Kombat is more a riff on like the Street Fighter formula, and not and didn't really set a template for like Smash Brothers. Like I feel like it's a different type of casual.
It certainly is a different type of casual, but I don't think that there is. I do think there is another market for casual of fighters. And obviously Mortal Kombat is super popular. That game sells incredibly well. And it's only in the like most recent iterations that the fighting game community has been like, oh yeah, and these ones actually are really good fighters too. Like they're mechanically sound. But yeah, that is interesting that like there are we have these two different examples of like, here's how casual fighting games work.
Yeah, I guess like how Super Mario Brothers kind of defined platformers.
Yeah.
I feel like Smash Brothers defined a certain type of fighting game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting to me that like we see so many riffs on that when like we don't really see that many riffs on like Mario Kart. Like I guess there's the Sonic racing games, there's Mod Nation Racers, and like
I mean, I feel like there's a ton of garbage
Diddy Kong Racing,
like garbage kart racers come out all the time, like the Nickelodeon one,
right?
The Garfield one that just came out. Like
I forgot about the Garfield
like
one.
There's like fruit racers or whatever, like
sure. Sugar Rush from the Ralph Breaks the Internet franchise.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just totally wrong on that. But so we thought we would take a little time here to break down both our experiences and our not experiences with games that are Smash Brothers like. So we're going to start with a little bit of research that I did here that is not, true to, I think, either of our experiences. Mark, are you familiar with the game Super Smash Flash? It's a browser game. So we're starting with a bootleg here from April 2006. It is a Smash Brothers-like game that uses Nintendo characters, is a total bootleg ripoff pirate job that you can play in a browser. And there is a sequel to this game that is in beta right now, so Super Smash Flash 2, which continues to use all of these like heavily copyrighted Nintendo characters and all of this gameplay that is very obviously just like ripped off directly from the original Nintendo game. I just think it is interesting that there is such a like this game is just out there.
I also think it's interesting that they have like a beta
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like it is. There seems to be a thriving community around it. But there's a limit to how much I can really get excited about a bootleg game. I guess there is one more bootleg Smash-like game that I am interested in, which is Super Smash Land, which we've talked about on the show before. It is a Game Boy style demake of Super Smash Brothers. That is just in those 4 Game Boy colors, different shades of green. And it just includes like Pikachu, Link, Mario, maybe Mega Man and Simon Belmont are in there. It's like 5 or 6 characters, and is a super simple demake of Super Smash Brothers. Mark, did you ever get a chance to play Super Smash Land?
No.
You can just download it on it's playable on computer stuff, and is actually a pretty competent adaptation of Super Smash Brothers. And in fact, one of the officially like made games that we're talking about later in the episode is made by the guy who made that game that got published on Xbox later. So, but let's go back to the first of these chronologically speaking, which is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Smash Up. Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, just that the basic facts of it came out September 22nd, 2009 on Wii and PlayStation 2.
I think it's interesting that it wasn't really like looking at this list until the Wii era that we started seeing Smash-like games.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that the first Super Smash Brothers came out on the Nintendo 64 in 1999, and then 2 years later, the GameCube version, Smash Brothers Melee, comes out, and then we don't see any new Smash until the Wii comes out in 2008. So that's a 7-year gap.
And I feel like that maybe I was paying so much attention then, but I feel like Super Smash Brothers Brawl was like an event on the scale that Super Smash Brothers Ultimate is like gearing up to be.
Yeah, I totally think that's right. And part of that is because the Wii was more, especially in 2008, was still super popular with people who were playing Nintendo games and with just everyone, and Melee is such a like legend in the franchise that like, the thinking was like it could only be the greatest video game ever, which is an expectation that we always put on Smash. I don't really know why, but we do. And so 2008, only the next year, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Smash Up comes out. It is interesting that this game comes out on the Wii. It also comes out on the PlayStation 2. I've only played the Wii version. This game is it's weird. So there is no real crossover in this, right? It is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle characters, and it starts with an incredibly limited roster of characters that are unlocked from the get-go. It's like the 4 main turtles, Splinter, April, Casey, and like that's it. Maybe a foot soldier, maybe not. And so you've got to like unlock everyone, kind of laboriously, kind of slowly, and well, the game basically steals the Smash fighting formula 1-for-1. Like you're building up you are dealing damage to people, which is just like a percentage, and then you knock them out of the ring, exactly like cut and paste, just like Smash. Its presentational aspects try to like borrow from like TMNT history, and so like they present a lot of cutscenes like comic books, which I don't think this ever works in video games. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It always comes across as cheap.
It always comes across as cheap. Like there's some of it in the first Infamous, and like the game looks so good when it's running, and then you're like, oh, now you're telling part of the story through like comic book art. It doesn't make sense. It's as though you're watching a movie and they're like, oh, this part of the game would really be better if you played it.
Especially because
the movie. I mean,
was this game tied to like this computer animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle reboot, like TMNT, I think they called it?
So yes and no. It uses the same voice cast for and some similar designs, but it is not explicitly tied to any part of like the TMNT mythos. And Peter Laird, one of the co-creators of the Ninja Turtles, like wrote some of the stories in it. And there's obviously like original comic art. So like it's not really clear. They're not adapting anything. It's not well, Mirage Comics was like part of working on this game. They weren't it's not the Mirage version of the characters. It's not the movie version of the characters. It's not the cartoon version of the characters.
Did the Wii version use motion controls? Or
I don't remember it using motion controls. I just remember having to play it with the nunchuck and Wii remote together. Basically, the way that I played Smash as well. Smash Brothers Brawl. Yeah, so I mean the game itself feels a little bit unremarkable, and I think partially that is because it is just Ninja Turtles. Like they picked a license and just did it. And where I do think there are a lot of missed opportunities in this game. I think it is largely like half baked. And like the roster is too small. Even when you unlock everyone, it's still only like 20-ish characters. The Wii U version had some characters that were exclusive to it, including a rabid version, like Raving Rabbids, because this game
was an Ubisoft game.
It's a new Ubisoft published game. A rabid version of Splinter, a rabid foot soldier, just a regular old rabid. So beaten Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle to the punch by like 10 years. But yeah, so even with all of that, it feels so like insular and like pretty vanilla, even by Ninja Turtle standards, because like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles mythology is wide ranging, and you can go back to like ancient Japan, you can go to Dimension X, and you can do Leatherhead and all these like amazing mutants. And the roster was just very conservative and kind of boring in that regard. So the game itself becomes conservative and kind of boring.
I mean, I think it's I never played this game. I think the expectations for like a licensed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle like smash up like this were probably pretty modest.
Yeah.
But the next game on our list, expectations were sky high.
Okay, let's get to this game because this is probably the most interesting one on the list. We are talking about 2012's PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Now, we are going to break form for a second and talk about a game that did not come to a Nintendo platform. This game came to the PlayStation 3 and Vita at the same time. That does mean that PlayStation beat Nintendo to a portable Smash-like game.
That's right. Facts are facts.
They got there first. So, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. This game is more aesthetically and like conceptually stealing from Smash Brothers in that it is like we're going to take all of the
like Sony platform heavy hitters.
Yep, and we're going to mix them all together in one chaotic mess, and you're going to love it. So, notable characters in this game. You've got your Nathan Drake, you've got your Sackboy, you've got Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal.
Kratos?
Yeah, Kratos is in here. Parappa the Rapper is in here, although the creator of Parappa the Rapper was upset that they liked that Parappa was getting some attention, but then was like, I wish he wasn't in such a violent game. If they'd let me make another Parappa, I would totally do it. And they were like, nope, we just want to make him punch. So it's these kinds of characters that do appear in PlayStation games, and they did a lot of cool stuff with like the stages where every level was like a crossover between two different PlayStation properties, and so that it's all sort of cool, and I think the like mission of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was like on the right track, but the game falls short in a couple different ways. I think the first is in the roster.
Yeah, it's just hard to muster enthusiasm for any of these characters. I don't know that maybe Parappa the Rappa, but otherwise, are any of these beloved characters?
I mean, like, I would say that Nathan Drake is a beloved character, but like not really in this way. Like there's something about the Nintendo characters in how simple they are that like if I get Zelda punching Mario,
It's delightful.
It's delightful. But like, if I get, and I'm just going to use like far afield PlayStation characters here, but if I get, Sully from Uncharted punching, Ellie from The Last of Us, like, well, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Like, I know these characters' inner lives. I don't want them to be violent towards each other. And like, there's the sort of more mature nature of the PlayStation games makes it harder for it to be like a fun little like beat 'em up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like Princess Peach beating up Dr. Mario is so completely out of either character's natures.
Right.
Whereas like Nathan Drake beating up Kratos, you're just kind of like,
yeah, those are violent people. Those are both killers.
Like, you leave Parappa the Rapper out of this. Right. He's too innocent. He should show up in Smash Brothers.
Yes. Oh my god, Mark. I would love that. But so yeah, like the game, and like you just have to have like a sense of humor about these things, right? If you're mixing all of these mythologies together, and like it just never felt like they had settled on a tone for the game in general that made a lot of sense or acknowledged that sense of humor.
I mean, I feel like it's a really good example because as far as I know, and I only played a small amount of this game, like technically it seemed as in like the fighting controls or whatever, like seemed competent.
Sure.
As like a fighting game, it seemed competent.
With one exception. So and it's a big one. The way the game works is when you hit opponents with regular attacks, it knocks little blue orbs out of them, and you absorb these little blue orbs. There are also orbs that just appear around the screen, and you can collect them as well. And as you get blue orbs, your like super meter or whatever it's called goes up. And when it reaches a certain level, then you can use a special move. And so there's like level 1 special moves, level 2, and level 3. And the only way to knock someone out is to use a special move. So you are never actually damaging your opponent. You are only ever building up your meter, which feels weird, right? Like in any other fighting game, if you're chipping away at someone's health or like raising their damage percentage, you are doing something to make them less effective and not make yourself more effective. And I think they did this just so they could be like, no, look, we're not Smash Brothers. We're different. It's a different style of game. But like, it is a worse style of game as far as I'm concerned. If they just went the extra mile and were just like, yep, it's Smash, and they can still have those meters and build up, moves that are more likely to knock you out of the ring. But like, it is so important to have that like feeling of progression that you're actually chipping away at your opponent's health. Otherwise, it feels hollow.
The
way it is.
The premise for this game, which is just like, oh, we'll just do Smash Brothers, but with PlayStation characters, is on paper a great idea.
Yes,
but I think it was doomed to failure because those games, while a lot of those games, like Uncharted and God of War and Twisted Metal, well, they are fun.
Mm-hmm.
They're not fun in the same way that Nintendo games are fun, which I would say are more like joyful.
Sure, yeah.
Right? Like Uncharted, playing those games can be an amazing experience, but it's not a joyful experience. You're not delighted or surprised. Or you might be surprised, but you're not like delighted in the same way that you are with Super Mario Odyssey. And so you just have a different connection to those characters. I think going back to your original point, just like you have a different connection with those characters than you do with Nintendo's rosters or the characters that they choose, like Pac-Man.
Yeah, exactly. And like they're picking those characters pretty deliberately, right? I remember being very surprised when we saw that Solid Snake was going to be in Smash Brothers Brawl, right? Because he felt to me, and I was younger at the time, so I probably wasn't really seeing Metal Gear as a series for what it actually is, but I saw him as too serious of a character to be, in fighting in a ring with like, Little Mac and Mario. Again, Little Mac wasn't in that game, but whatever. That like he's not cartoony enough, and it's like as an adult that can actually see that Metal Gear is a work of parody in addition to being like whatever statements Kojima is actually making about war or whatever. It is largely a work of parody and is a joke. So it makes perfect sense in Smash, even if I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah, and the character himself in Smash
Is goofy.
Is goofy.
Yeah. Which, when like Raiden shows up in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, he's not goofy.
Taken deadly seriously.
Deadly serious, which is a problem for that character in general. But so at this point, we start to move away from games that are crossover fighters and into like a new generation of Smash-like games that are presenting their entirely unique rosters. So there are 3 big ones that we're going to talk about, and 2 that we actually have experience with. So forgive us as we don't have information about everything. But Brawlhalla, which came out in November of 2015.
So and I was looking it up. That was actually like kind of when it started its open beta, but it was officially released in 2017.
Oh, okay,
so like
great.
2 years later.
And then Rivals of the Aether, which is the Xbox game or Xbox One game that I was talking about before, which is the sort of spiritual sequel to Super Smash Land. So it was that guy who developed that bootleg Smash game.
Oh, cool.
Who got to actually make a Smash Brothers style game. And then Brawl Out, which came out just in 2017. And now both Brawlhalla and Brawl Out are available on Switch, which is why Mark and I were interested in picking them up in the first place. So how do you want to tackle this? What would you like to talk about?
So here? I feel like Brawl Out is the most traditional like Smash-like game out of the 2 that we've played.
Yes. So Brawl Out is it has the same sort of presentation as Smash Brothers in that it's all 3D models, and I guess that's really it. Is that it looks probably the most like Smash, and doesn't present a huge roster of characters. It's maybe like 20, and some of those are guest characters like the Drifter from Hyper Light Drifter, Juan from Guacamelee, and Ukulele. I think Ukulele is a recent addition.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And a lot of the other characters, there are like variations on them that have minor cosmetic and like stat differences. Basically they're like Echo Fighters in Smash Ultimate. But it keeps that roster like pretty tidy, and it doesn't become overwhelming. So we played a little bit of Brawl Out together, maybe like a week or so ago. What did you think about it when we were playing?
I was initially skeptical.
Yeah.
But I actually found myself enjoying it once I found a character that I like took to their controls.
Yeah. Well, you're playing as the bird whose name I can't remember.
Right.
This is one of the things that's hard about talking about these games where it's all new characters where you're like, I don't know who this is. And with the exception of the 3 crossover characters that I named, I can't really Paco the Frog, a 4-armed frog. I like him.
Kind of like Brawl Out's mascot.
Yeah, he is kind of like Brawl Out's mascot, who is playable from the beginning, which cannot be said of Brawlhalla and Brawlhalla's mascot. But we'll get to Brawlhalla in a second. But yeah, Brawl Out. Yeah. So you were saying that it was fun for you once you like found a character.
Yeah, like it actually felt like the closest to Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is like the niche is trying to fill, right? Like on PC or where there isn't a Super Smash Brothers game.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good substitute.
Yeah. I will say that it doesn't run super well on Switch.
It was the craziest thing to me was how much difficulty it had on the character select screen.
Yeah, it was very strange. We were playing it docked. And Mark and I are like scrolling around trying to figure out who these characters are. And it took a good like 3 seconds for it to like load the image of the character.
Yeah, felt longer than that, but it probably was just like 3
seconds is a long time.
Yeah.
Like this is as we're on the character select screen, just moving from
the
one
cursor
character to the next. Yeah, it would take a really long time.
The load screens were really long as well, but like once you got into the actual match,
yeah,
it felt fine.
Yeah, and fun and fast. No items in this game.
Right, and I wasn't sure if that was something that you can toggle on or off, or if it was just no items as well.
Sure. I mean, I think it is just no items. I guess I didn't do a super deep dive into the game, but I did play some more like single player matches and a couple online. And it's really just the game, the fighting mechanics itself. This one may also be one of the more competitive ones. Just in that like the individual fighting is deep enough that you don't really need all the extra accoutrement of chaos that those other things bring in. This game takes a lot of elements from the Smash series and like from the competitive scene. Like it makes wave dashing like an explicit thing that like the character can do just by hitting either L or R and like picking a direction. You can do that in the air. And so they just sort of like dodge away. It's not a like shield and roll necessarily. They just take the wave dashing part of it and implement it into the game proper. So I this is the one that for me feels the most like a fighting game, but also sort of the most like a Smash game, and probably my favorite Smash like. Perhaps not the most interesting. I still think PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is more interesting. But this may be my favorite of these games.
Yeah, I feel like they did a really good job of copying the stuff from Smash Brothers that they wanted to copy.
Mm-hmm.
So I suppose that's flattering.
Yeah, kudos, good copy.
Yeah.
But I also think that the original characters are interesting too and have personality. In a way that I'm definitely going to say that we don't see in Brawlhalla.
Definitely aesthetically,
mm-hmm.
like you're saying, interesting. The color choices are interesting. Like it's vibrant.
Yeah. And most of the characters are animals, which is also just like an interesting little hook. Like I said, there's a frog. There's like a cat lady. There's
like the falcon character.
There's like a frozen walrus man. So like it's they're cool looking characters.
Yeah, you're probably not going to be like fall in love with them, but they are interesting enough that like it doesn't feel like a ripoff.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to pivot on doesn't feel like a ripoff to Brawlhalla?
Well, so Brawlhalla is interesting to me because it is much more akin to Fortnite or League of Legends or Paladins or any of these other like Arena of Valor, like any of these free to play service games.
Which it should be noted Brawlhalla is.
Yeah, exactly. Which I didn't realize.
Yeah, that it just is free to play. I was also confused about that too. That I thought like it's free on Switch for a little bit, but it is in fact free on Switch and on everything that it's on.
Yeah, and so the way it works is just like any of those other service games, you can pay money to unlock characters, or you can earn gold by participating in online matches that you can use to unlock characters and skins and different weapon and all that kind of stuff.
It also has like blind boxes that you can open to just see, it's a random chance of what you get to unlock there.
And like League of Legends or Arena of Valor, there are like 6 or so fighters that are unlocked in a given like time period, maybe like a week, that you can play for free. And then in a week they'll rotate out, and you may not be able to have those characters again. And then if you like find a fighter that you want to play, you have to purchase it to know that it'll be there all the time.
Because there is one of the fighters in Brawlhalla, like the one that's on the icon, on the your home screen on Switch, was not available to play this week, and I was like, "What? Like I can't play as what I perceive to be the main character through the course of this game."
So Brawlhalla does have items.
Yes,
and it does something a little like interesting. There's 3 items that are persist, or like a bomb, a mine, and like horn.
The horn that like summons
a Valkyrie or something that like deals a little bit of damage to anybody in its path. And then the rest of the time it will drop. These swords are dropped, and when you pick them up, you are getting one of 2 item types that your character can have. if you're a ranged character, it'll be a bow, or if you're a melee character, they're like kind of like Hulk hands that you put on, like fists basically.
Right,
And
then
then
there are like sword characters too, where like one of them is like
like a scythe.
lance.
Yeah.
And then the other is like it's like a spear or something.
And you don't, at least as far as I can tell, you don't know which of those two you're picking up
Yeah.
until you grab them.
I'm also not really clear on how long you hold them. It seems like a while, and then you either lose it or like it gets knocked out of you, or
Oh yeah, I'm not sure.
you don't hold on to it for the whole,
I
match.
I took to throwing mine fairly often.
Oh, great.
So yeah. It also has like a couple of interesting game types.
Mm-hmm.
They introduced one not that long ago where the goal of it is it's 2-on-2, and they're dropping a soccer ball, and it's like an oversized soccer ball, and you're just trying to get it into the other team's goal.
Yeah.
And the first team to 5 wins. The other one that I actually thought was kind of fun was you pick 3 fighters, the other person picks 3 fighters, and it's a 3-stock match, and every time you die, you respawn as like the next fighter that you picked.
Yeah. Well, and this is a mode that's in the new Smash, right?
Oh, it might be.
I think this is something that they brought up in one of the directs. So it's good to see that Smash is learning from its clones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and so the presentation of this game is all the characters are 2D fighters, and you know there are so many characters in this thing, and I can't really tell, are they all different, or
I think they're all. I do think they're all different,
but there are only so many different like types, right? Like
right.
you said, if you're a ranged type, then you get like these 2 different weapons. So like, even if you are, it may just be like difference in stats or like how much damage or they deal, or you know, whatever,
or aesthetics if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think the 2D aspect of it works fine. Like, I think it looks okay. I was really disappointed in the music.
Yeah, I actually think the 2D aspect of it makes it look a little bit cheap, because I think the way that like the characters are animated, that like the individual parts of the sprites are actually polygons, so that like someone's arm is 3 different, you know, polygons, one for the hand, one for the forearm, and one for like the shoulder to the elbow, and that they're just sort of like animated together. So it's not a real sprite, and it's not a real like polygon model. It's the sort of like crappy in between, which allows them to, you know, just like put the same skeleton, you know, the same like wireframe skeleton on, you know, half the characters, and like animate them all the same way, is a quick and easy way for them to just load the game up with characters and introduce more whenever, you know, when they, so Shovel Knight is in, or is coming to this game. I'm not really sure which, because he wasn't available when I was playing. And it's not just Shovel Knight. It is Shovel Knight. It is King Knight. It is Dark Knight. It is Plague Knight. It is Spectre Knight, and maybe that's it. But that's 5 characters from Shovel Knight. And in any other, you know, in Smash Brothers, you've got to be Fire Emblem to get 5 characters, right?
And in Brawlout, that's like a fourth of the entire roster.
Right, exactly. But like, it seems like it's very easy for them to just you know, make up the physics of one character.
Oh,
and
sure.
just like staple it on an existing character type.
I don't know. I guess to me, I thought that Brawlhalla was fine.
Yeah.
I think I had more fun with Brawlout, but there is something in my mind to be said for these free to play games.
Sure. Yeah.
That it's like the barrier to entry is none, basically. Right. You know, you need a system to run it on, and other than that,
and a Nintendo Online subscription.
But if you're you know, if you're playing this on PC,
yeah,
or any of the other platforms it's available for, I like the idea that somebody is able to experience these games without having to put a ton of money into them.
Right. Like, I mean, I guess on the flip side, I don't like that if you are playing this game because you're playing it for free, and you want to experience more of it, like there's really no ceiling to how much money you could spend on this
That
game.
is 100% true. I guess like I think it would have been fun when I was a kid if these free to play games were around, because you get to play a Overwatch like game. You would get to play Fortnite. You would get to play, like I like that the barrier for entry to games is getting lower and lower, and it's true that the flip side of that is that the amount of money that you can spend on it is infinite. But I would like to think that people are introduced to this sort of game, and then will maybe decide that they want to pick up Smash Brothers, or they want to pick up, I guess, PlayStation All Stars or something like that,
or Brawlout even,
or Brawlout.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I will say in Brawlout's favor is that it had probably the most seamless and easy online experience that I've had with any Nintendo Switch game. Where you just go into the multiplayer lobby and it drops you first into a little waiting area where you're playing against computer opponents. But every time it did that, I was there for 4 seconds, and then I was in a game with 3 other players. And it didn't no one was stuttering around the screen. Everything seemed super fluid and super easy. And I think some of that might be that it's not communicating that much information between them. Again, if all you are is 4 or 5 different discrete wire frames with different paint on them.
Are you talking about Brawlhalla?
I'm talking about Brawlhalla.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't know if I said that, but yeah. Brawlhalla, super smooth online experience.
Yeah, I felt the same exact way. Yeah.
So which makes that super low barrier to entry even lower. That the pain points of this game are almost non-existent. So it is. This is the game that was, or the studio that was purchased by Ubisoft. Yes,
right.
So that makes it the second Ubi appearance that we're seeing on this list of Smash-like games. And Rayman is a playable character in this. You should put those rabid characters from TMNT Smash Up in here as well. But I just think that's interesting that this is a market or a kind of game that Ubisoft is keeping an eye on.
Yeah. I also think it's just interesting that one of a Smash-like game that can exist as a service.
Yeah.
It'll potentially will just keep adding new fighters forever and ever and ever.
Right. So this does leave out the Rivals of Aether, which is another one of these games that we haven't played. It has a pretty good reputation, and also is a largely original cast, but then has some crossover characters in it. So the only one of these that we've talked about that doesn't have any crossover component at all, I guess none of them, because the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one had the rabid characters in them. So everyone has decided if it's not a crossover, it has crossover characters in it. So maybe I'm just wrong, and that's what these games always are going to be. Mark, do you have any grander conclusions about the identity of this kind of game, or is there anything from Brawlhalla and Brawlout or any of these games that you'd like to see adapted into Smash proper?
I think I guess just my experience playing Brawlout and Brawlhalla and the other Smash-like games that I've seen, it more than anything proves what a special alchemy Super Smash Brothers is.
Totally.
Because you can take Brawlout is as far as I can tell a very good game for what it is.
A good execution on that formula.
But it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel special because it doesn't have the intangible elements that the music, the different soundtracks, the different remixes, the stages, and some of it is just straight up nostalgia. I don't have nostalgia for Four Armed Frogman.
Right. Right. Well, because none exists. Do you think, and because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, do you think that there is a either video game company or a franchise of some kind that could be adapted into a Smash-like game that would work for you? I would say that for me, TMNT Smash Up makes a lot of sense, should be better than it is. I love the Ninja Turtle universe. I think the characters are varied enough that if they really went nuts with it, that could have the same sort of appeal for me that Smash Brothers does.
I don't know. I feel a little bit like, and I 100% believe that, like individual franchises could make a like fun Smash like fighter, but I do feel like in the grand scheme of like a Smash Brothers game where you're taking characters from tons of different companies and mixing them all together lovingly, like with a lot of attention to detail, it feels like Nintendo has already drank that milkshake.
Sure.
I don't know who else would even like want to try to attempt it, because most other companies like that could venture a try, they're already participating in Smash Brothers.
Right. Or are expressing that same sort of idea in a different way. Like Capcom has the Marvel vs. Capcom games, and also what are those games that are, it's like a Capcom and SNK and maybe Sega are all in like a role-playing game together. Do you know these games?
Mm-hmm.
They're real weird. So like it's that same sort of concept but expressed differently. And obviously like Marvel has the Avengers and just comics in general, which is a crossover fest all the time. But like if there was a just straight Marvel Smash-like game,
but it wouldn't feel the same. It wouldn't be the same, because
I guess you're right. It's not quite as big.
Yeah, it's just like putting all the Marvel characters together, and you're like, that's cool.
Right.
Like it is. It's cool.
It's cool, but we've seen it. It just in different contexts. Yeah. So maybe that's it. Maybe Nintendo drank that milkshake.
I don't know. I'd love to be wrong.
All right. Well, let's close out this segment, and then we'll start asking questions of our listeners. Let's ask these questions. What sort of franchise or company or whatever, how do you...
Or like mix of companies. Like before we started this, we were pitching a Kingdom Hearts brawler.
Yeah. I mean, that actually, if there was a Disney Smash-like, that's pretty close. That could do it, because you could have Star Wars in there.
You could have Marvel in there.
You could have Marvel in there. You could put Wall-E in there.
That's pretty good.
It's a perfect game.
Yeah.
It's a perfect game, and I haven't even mentioned princesses yet. But yeah, anything like that, pitch those to us. We would love to read your ideas or your reactions to this. Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. And also, if you have any experience with any of these games that we have mentioned, or like the Rivals of Aether, which we didn't really have anything to say, would love to hear all of that. It is fascinating to me that there are fighting game communities that have sprung out of these things. And also, are there any that we missed? I don't think that we missed any like substantial ones. There was a second where I was like, does Power Stone kind of count as one of these? I don't think it does. I think it's a unique kind of fighting game, pure and perfect in its own way. But write into us with any of that, Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. Mark, what do you think? Time to close this out?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get out of here. If you like this episode, please rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts. That all helps us out tremendously. We can't cross over with Mario or with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so the only way for us to get our name out there is for you to share us on Facebook or Twitter. On Facebook, I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society.
On Twitter.
What? I don't know what I said.
Facebook.
I said that at Facebook. On Facebook, the show is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. We keep that one easy. I'm falling apart, so this is the end of the show. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Eller saying thanks for listening.
Campfire.